Welcome to the Moraine Sailing Club Learn to Sail program. We're looking forward to our class and to helping you have a fun and safe time learning to sail at Lake Arthur. Each week there will be a short video which we hope you'll be able to review before class. These videos provide an introduction of information you'll be covering with your instructor during your class. Today we're going to try and answer some of the questions that you might have before your first class. And we'll briefly talk about some of the topics that we will be covering during week 1. There will also be links below the video to some additional references that you might want to review before class. Don't worry if it doesn't all make sense right away. Your certified U.S. sailing instructor will be there to explain and to demonstrate the skills and to answer your questions. Moraine Sailing Club is a member of U.S. Sailing, and our instructors are certified by U.S. Sailing. We also teach the U.S. Sailing Small Boat Curriculum, and there's more information available at ussailing.org. To complete this program, you'll have to do 4 things. You'll first learn and demonstrate 14 sailing skills to an instructor. You'll tie a bowline, a cow hitch, a cleat hitch, and a reef knot for an instructor. You'll need to pass the written exam, and you'll perform a capsize recovery of a small sailboat. When you complete Learn to Sail, you will receive a U.S. Sailing Red Book. Think of it like a sailboat driver's license. After you complete Learn to Sail, if you wish to join the Community Sailing Program, which allows you to borrow and sail club-owned sailboats on your own, you'll need to sign up for an instructor check ride on a CSP qualifying day. See the event webpage on the Moraine Sailing Club website for more details. We teach Learn to Sail at the Watts Bay Marina on Lake Arthur, which is located a little less than an hour north of downtown Pittsburgh on I-79. You can get directions using Google Maps if you type in Watts Bay Marina. When you arrive at Watts Bay, look for the Learn to Sail flag next to the MSC training building. Park on the grass and come down to the training building. Class starts at 9 a.m. sharp, but please try to arrive and check in by 8:50. Since it's usually quite a drive to get to the lake, you're going to want to check and make sure your class is still going to be happening that day. You can do this by going to the website. At 7 a.m. each morning before class, we make a decision. We might have to cancel the class if there's low or no winds, or if the winds are too high, or if there's lightning predicted. But if it's just going to be cool temperature or maybe light rain, typically we still will sail. To decide or to find out if class is going to happen, go to the MSC website and the event page. Click on the specific date for that class, and you will see a message. Here's a couple examples on the right, showing that the class is canceled or that the class is going to go ahead and maybe you should bring a jacket. It's always a good idea to check this before you get in the car. Here are some suggestions of things you might want to bring to class or wear to class. Lake Arthur is quite a bit north of Pittsburgh. Oftentimes the weather is a little bit different at Lake Arthur than in Pittsburgh. It might be warmer or cooler, might be raining at one place or the other. You'll want to wear comfortable clothes and usually dress in layers. That allows you to add a layer or take a layer off depending on what the temperature is or maybe how it changes during the day. You might want to bring some extra dry clothes because you might get wet while you're sailing. You will definitely get wet on the day that you practice your capsize recovery drill. You'll probably want to bring some sunglasses, maybe a hat or a baseball cap. You'd like to wear closed-toed shoes. Do not wear sandals. This will help protect your feet both while you're on the beach and while you're in the boat. Try to choose shoes that are not going to come off too easily. There's a lot of sun during the summer and especially out on the lake. You'll want to wear plenty of sunscreen and bring some more to apply throughout the day. You'll also want to bring a filled water bottle and a snack and lunch. There's no concession nor fast food restaurants near enough to the lake for you to be able to leave and return during your short lunch break, so you'll want to bring those with you. You'll also want to make sure you drink plenty of water as we're out in the sun and the heat during the summertime. While sailing, you must wear a life jacket. We have many types and sizes for you to borrow for class. There's no need for you to buy one or bring one of your own, but you're certainly welcome to do so. Here's a list of the learning topics that we'll be covering during week 1. You'll be going over with your instructor the parts of the boat, information about safety on a sailboat, and then information about the points of sail. These are the directions that we sail, maybe into the wind, across the wind, downwind. We'll also be talking about tacking and jibing, and you'll be practicing and learning about tiller control and hand switching, as well as learning to tie a cleat hitch. These are topics that are covered briefly in this video, but your instructor will have plenty of time to go over them with you in person. Sailing can be a lot of fun, but parts of it can be confusing at first. There are many parts to a sailboat, and some of those parts have names which you are probably not familiar with. But hang in there, it starts to make more sense once you've spent some time on the boat. Let's start with the picture on the left. This shows the parts of a sail. Sails are usually a large triangular shape. The top of the sail is called the head, while the bottom of the sail is called the foot. The edge of the sail that's closest to the front of the sailboat is called the luff, while the edge of the sail that's closest to the back of the boat is called the leech. The corner of the sail towards the front of the boat is called the tack, and the back lower corner of the sail is called the clew. Some sails have some rectangular pockets sewn into them, and in those pockets we put a stiffener, and we call that stiffener a batten, and that helps to keep the sail nice and flat. Now in the picture on the right, you can see the parts of a sailboat itself. The sails are on top. Some boats have one sail, like a mainsail. Some have two, which would be a mainsail and a jib. The tall metal bar that sticks up high into the sky over the sailboat is the mast. And the sails are hung from the mast using halyards. A main halyard is a rope that pulls the main sail up to the top of the mast, while the jib halyard pulls the jib sail up towards the top of the mast. There are some lines, some cables really, that connect the mast to the front of the boat. That's called a forestay, and to the sides of the boat. You'll see a starboard shroud and a port shroud. We'll talk about port and starboard in a few minutes. In the middle of the boat, there's a centerboard. On some boats, like the Sunfish, the centerboard is replaced with another board called a dagger board. But in both cases, these boards are fins that stick down into the water and help the boat to go in a straight line when you're sailing. There are ropes on a boat, but when we put rope on a boat, we don't call it a rope anymore, we call it a sheet. Here you see something called the main sheet. It's a piece of what we would normally call rope that's attached to the main sail. And it's a piece of line that the sailors use to adjust the position of the sail to help change the direction or maybe the speed that they want to sail at. The jib sail in the front would also have two sheets attached to it. Those are called jib sheets. And again, those are simply pieces of line, pieces of rope that are used to pull the sail in one direction or another to adjust the way you're sailing. At the back of the boat, there's another fin that sticks down into the water called the rudder. It has the job of helping us to steer the boat. And the way you adjust the direction that you want to go is by using the tiller and the tiller extension, which are small wooden rods attached to that rudder that allow us to rotate it back and forth. And that's what you'll be doing during week 1 with your instructor as you sail back and forth on the lake. Another topic we'll be covering during week 1 is safety on a sailboat. We want to make sure that we have a fun time each time we go out sailing, but also that we're safe. In order to be safe, you will always want to wear a personal flotation device. Sometimes we call it a PFD, or sometimes people refer to it as a life jacket. When you're in a boat or on the dock or near the shore, you'll always want to wear closed-toed shoes, not sandals. Closed-toed shoes help to protect our feet and help to keep from the lines or other sharp objects in the boat from injuring our feet. There's a lot of sun out usually, and so it's always a good idea to wear plenty of sunscreen and to keep reapplying it throughout the day. When it's necessary to move around on a boat, sometimes the boat is rocking one side back and forth, and it can be a little bit unsteady. When you're moving on a boat, we say use one hand for the boat and one hand for you, which means use that hand for you to hold on to the side of the boat or the mast or something to keep your balance while you're on the boat. It's always important to check the weather before you go sailing and to keep paying attention to the weather while you're sailing. You don't want to end up sailing when there might be lightning, and you don't want to sail in conditions that might be above your sailing ability. When you're learning to sail, it's important not to sail when the winds are too high. I recommend starting at 7 or 8 miles an hour or less, and as you get more confidence, you can build up to maybe 10 miles an hour. If the winds are 12 or 14 or higher than that, at first you're not going to want to go out sailing until you have some more practice. When you're on a sailboat, you'll find that there's something called the boom. It's a large metal rod that's hanging just above head height. You'll want to pay attention to that boom because it swings back and forth as you sail, and you don't want to get hit in the head with the boom. You'll want to duck in time. This is particularly important when you're sailing downwind, and your instructor will explain that to you and show you how to be safe around the boom when you get into the boat. Another thing to keep in mind is that when you're pulling on lines attached to the boat and you're maybe trying to get some extra leverage, avoid wrapping the rope around your hand or any other part of your body for that matter. You never know when the line is going to get suddenly pulled by the boat or maybe by the wind, and you don't want to have it tied around or tightly wrapped around part of your body. Another thing to be aware of is while you're in a boat, maybe there'll be other boats that'll be nearby or the pier or the dock nearby. You want to avoid putting any part of your body between your boat and the other boat or between your boat and the pier. It's a very easy way to get pinched, and that can hurt. Another thing that you'll want to do to be safe on a boat is to do some practice drills, and we will do these in class. We'll learn how to do a capsize recovery, so you can get that boat back up and get back into the boat if it were to tip over. And we'll also practice person in water drills, which is a safety technique we use in order to recover something. Maybe it's fallen overboard like your hat, or maybe it's your sailing partner and you need to get them back into the boat. I know that there's a lot of terminology on boats, but it helps to have a common language and to be able to speak with the other people in your sailboat or your instructor about where something is or what's going to be happening in the boat. On a boat, we talk about there being a port side and a starboard side. We don't talk about it being a left or a right side because that can depend on which direction you're facing. If everyone is facing forward, you could all agree which is the left side of the boat. But if your instructor is facing forward and you're facing him or her towards the back of the boat, their view of the left side of the boat might be very different than your view. So it's good to have an agreed upon side. And we do that agreement. We call them port and starboard. The port side of the boat is the left side of the boat when you're facing in the direction that the boat is sailing. It's easy to remember that port is on the left side because port is the shorter of the two words and left is the shorter of the two sides. On a boat, very often items, lines, stickers, handles on the port side of the boat will be colored red. Red is also a short word compared to green. On the right-hand side of the boat, again, while you're facing forward, we call that the starboard side of the boat. Things on the starboard side are often colored green. Starboard is the longer word, green is the longer word, and right is the longer word. So take a moment to look around on the boat and try to talk about things being on the port side. Maybe it's the port side jib sheet, or it's the port line, or it's the port shroud, or maybe you're going to be approaching another boat on your port side. If you use that sort of terminology, then everyone else on your boat will know what you're talking about. In addition to port and starboard, there are other directions on a sailboat. These are directions that we refer to relative to the wind. So if we were on a sailboat and we were pointed with the nose of the boat looking straight ahead into the wind, like that would be the boat here that we see at the 12 o'clock position. We call that a position being in irons, or maybe pointed into the wind. And you can see from the diagram that if you point your boat into the wind, that your sail will make a little squiggly back and forth, kind of blowing in the breeze direction. And in fact, you will not be able to sail your sailboat directly into the wind. It's not possible to do that, and we call that direction towards the 12 o'clock or into the wind. We call that the boat is pointed in irons, or we sometimes say it's the no-go zone. And that no-go zone extends about 45 degrees to either side of the wind. So you cannot sail in that direction. If you're just outside of that direction, though, we call that position close-hauled. You can be close-hauled going a little bit to the left of the wind or a little bit to the right of the wind. Instead of saying left and right on a boat, we use the terms we just learned, being port and starboard. Let's take the boat in this view that's at the 1 o'clock position. So the wind is coming in over the left side of that boat. Remember that the left side of the boat is called the port side. And so if we were in that position, going at the 1 o'clock position in this view, we would say that we are on a port heading, or maybe a port tack. If instead we were close-hauled heading towards the 11 o'clock position, now you see that the wind is coming into the boat over the right-hand side of the boat, which is known as the starboard side of the boat. And so we would say we are close-hauled on starboard tack in that position. You see that if we're not quite as close to the wind as close-hauled, we're maybe a little bit farther away from the wind, but not yet quite to 90 degrees. We call that being in a close reach. And again, you can have a close reach on a port tack, which would be maybe 2 o'clock on a clock, or close reach on a starboard tack, which is maybe 10 o'clock on the clock. When you get to the point that you're sailing across the wind, or 90 degrees to the wind, we say that you're headed on a beam reach. And again, you can be on a port reach, or you could be on a starboard reach. If you, instead of sailing across the wind, are pointing a little bit downwind, now we would say you're on a broad reach. And if you get all the way down to the point that you're running in the direction, or you're sailing with the wind, we now say that you are running. And you can be running with the sail on the right-hand side of your boat, and it means that the wind would be coming over the left-hand side of your boat. Since the wind is coming over the left or port side, we would say that that boat at the maybe 5:30 position on this clock is on a port tack, is running on port. While the boat that's at the 6:30 position, notice that they've placed their sail on the left or port side of the boat, and so the wind is coming mostly over the right-hand or starboard side of the boat. So that 6:30 boat is actually on a run, a starboard run. So these are all directions that you will learn and you'll be paying attention to. And your instructor may say, okay, let's sail on a port reach, port beam reach, for example. And you'll have to remember what that means and then adjust the direction your boat is headed to be able to go essentially in the 3 o'clock position. So we just talked about the directions that you would be sailing. Maybe you were sailing upwind on a close reach on port tack. So the wind is coming over the left side of your boat and you're headed maybe in the 1 o'clock direction, close to the wind but not yet into the no-go zone. Well, that's great if you want to keep heading on that same direction, but eventually you're going to want to turn. Eventually you're going to run out of lake, or there may be another boat in your way, or you may just be getting somewhere in a direction that you didn't want to go. So let's say you needed to go upwind. Maybe that's where you parked your car, or that's where you're meeting your friend for lunch. Well, we just said that it's not possible to sail directly into the wind. That's the no-go zone, right? So how does a sailboat make progress to get in that direction? And the answer is that they follow a zigzag path, like you see here on the left, where we go one direction up, maybe towards 11 o'clock for a little while, and then we turn sharply, passing through the wind, and now we go up at the 1 o'clock direction for a little while, and then we zigzag back. And by making each of those zigzags, those turns, we call them tacks. And we do that by moving the rudder on the boat and moving the sail on the boat. And this is something that's best learned while you're in the boat, and that's what you're going to be doing at your first class with your instructor, learning how to sail upwind by making a series of zigzag turns back and forth, until you can make your progress up into the wind. And then your instructor is also going to do the reverse, where you learn to sail downwind. Sailing downwind is a little easier in some ways. You could just go onto a run and go straight downwind. But there are times when it's a better idea to go zigzagging back and forth, jibing and jibing and jibing. Jibing is when you're making a turn going downwind. Tacking is when you're making a turn going upwind. And with your instructor, you get a chance to learn and practice these two important sailing skills. Thanks for taking time to review this video and getting ready for your first week of class. I hope you found this information helpful. I look forward to seeing you at the lake. If you'd like some more information about tacking or more information about the sailboat you'll be sailing on, I suggest you go to the MSC website, log in using your username and password, and go to the Community Sailing Program page. There you will see links to videos and step-by-step directions on how to rig and de-rig both a Sunfish and a Flying Scot sailboat. If you'd like to learn more and see a video about tacking on a small sailboat, click on the link below the video. See you at the lake.